Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and the time you were waiting for has finally arrived. The tier list has been and will be updated in this video. So we're going to talk about the new character Mephisto, as well as all of the new uniforms for, Maker, Professor X, Iron Man, and then Thing, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, aka Johnny, and then most recently Scarlet Witch and Vision. Those were the two uniforms that I was waiting, because after we saw the live stream preview with Cage and Kim, it was pretty much guaranteed that we were going to be getting new uniforms for at least Wanda. So I thought, you know what, rather than make a tier list maybe 3 or 4 days ago and then have to make another one or have to update it, too soon after, why don't I just wait and then do it all at once? So we've had enough time to play with the characters now. Scarlet Witch and Vision a little bit less, so we can always go back and tweak their spots a little bit, but I want to give you my impressions on them now after a few days and after getting feedback from the community. So we're going to go ahead and do that but first, before we do that, a little standard disclaimer, PSA, this is just my opinion. This is my tier list. You can choose to play the game however you want. You don't have to go for, my view of maximum efficiency or whatever. You can definitely build whoever you want. You can get through vast majority of the game content without having to focus on a tier list or focus on the meta. So yeah, it's just what I think. You're welcome to think whatever you'd like. And secondly, there have been changes to the tier list. So this is going to be a little bit confusing at first, but it's much more, I think overall it's much better. So basically what I did is I condensed 2 of the icons into the same icons. So instead of having one icon for supports, which were the hands together, and then another icon for strikers, which was this little bullseye icon, I said, you know what, most of the characters that have one of the icons have the other icon. Like for example, Storm. Storm is a good striker because of applying all defense down and I think fire, lightning and cold resist down. And Storm also is a good support because of her elemental buff that she gives to allies. So rather than giving her 2 separate buffs and having this long list, just give her the 1 buff. So now that buff, that little hands together, means they could be a support buff, like one of their passives like Coulson, or they could be a striker god. They could either be a support god or a striker god. Striker god like Weapon Hex, etc. Or they could be both. Honestly, a lot of the characters that are good supports are also really good strikers. Not all of them, but a lot of them. The second thing I did was I condensed the icons for Tier 3 or Awakening, which I changed to Transcendence, because it doesn't really make sense to have 2 different icons when it's essentially the same thing. The process is different. The cost is a little bit different, but essentially it's going all the way with the build, right? Do you need to go all the way with Valkyrie to get the most out of the character? Well, to get the most out of the character, maybe, but to get some of the buffs that make her really good, not really. You just need her tier 2 with her uniform. Now, of course, if you're going to bring them into World Boss Legend or Danger Room Extreme, then yes, you do need them tier 3 or Transcendent, but that's sort of obvious. I don't think the tier list needs to mention that. So because I freed up some icon slots, because I don't want to, pepper you with a billion icons, I decided to introduce a new icon, Dispatch Mission God, and that's the muscular arm flexing. This one is really important because not every character is built the same way for dispatch missions. So I wanted to highlight the characters who are really good for dispatch missions, and going forward, I will be adding a bit of value to characters that are good for dispatch missions. So even though a character may have dropped in other ways, if they've still maintained their value by being really good for dispatch missions, they might stay the same in the same place on the tier list and the patch notes. Not patch notes, anyways. Or if they stayed the same in value but also gained the dispatch, like Magneto, he actually went above, in my opinion. I think he's better than Star-Lord now because he's basically doing everything the same that he was doing, on top of being really, really good for dispatch missions as a leader and as a main damage dealer because of his extra damage to humans. So yeah, that is the recap on the tier list. Also, I've moved around some characters, so just to give you guys a brief breakdown on that, I moved Iron Fist and Carnage down, mainly because they just haven't been able to perform in dispatch, and they've lost value because they can't perform very well against Mephisto, but they perform well against Null. I also moved Molecule Man up 1 just because of his PvP presence. I moved Black Widow down to high utility because she basically has no value in PvP anymore, and she didn't gain anything from dispatch, and she's not really gaining anything anywhere. She's not that good for Mephisto. I also bumped Elena down because she's not getting her awakening, and she's really not used for much outside of like Conquest at this point. I also bumped Kamala down for basically the same reason as Yelena, and then I highlighted Dr. Voodoo. I almost wanted to bump him up, but I didn't. But man, he's so good, but he's just leadership. And then I actually bumped up Cyclops. I bumped him up ahead of Captain America and Storm because he's just such a good support. You know, he's just really, really good support and leadership for all the World Boss Legend content, and he's really doing a workhorse's effort. Whereas, I mean, Storm, you know, Storm and Captain America can maybe do more damage than Cyclops does as a standalone character, but we're at the point where we have so many good standalone characters that Cyclops' value tends to be underrated, but you still really need it. I also highlighted Namor because he's really good for dispatch missions. So he doesn't really get anything new, except he's just good for dispatch missions. So anyways, let's get started with the new characters, or well, the new character, and then the new characters that were old characters that were transformed by their uniforms. So starting it off with Mephisto, the brand new native tier 3, no surprise here, absolute powerhouse for PvE, for PvP. I'm going to be releasing a PvP video later today showing you what he can do without a PvP build. Very, very spicy stuff. He's fantastic top to bottom. Even though he's a blast type, he basically hits like a universal. He just hits so hard. He's got all of the effects that you would want: healing, iframe ignore, revive, immunity, you know, accumulation, huge tier 3 AoE. He's got all this stuff. He transforms. Super duper cool character. He's basically competing or exceeding Moonstone's value in ABX. He can go toe-to-toe with Null in all World Boss Ultimate and World Boss Legend content. Basically, the only World Boss Ultimate he can't really do that well would be maybe Proxima, because he doesn't do physical damage, and then maybe Quicksilver, because he has type disadvantage, and he doesn't have a lot of ignore dodge. But yeah, he goes toe-to-toe with basically some of the best characters in the game, and he is very close. He's neck and neck with a lot of them. So much fun to play, so strong. And, you know, maybe not the most flexible character in terms of the build, because you sort of want a judgment for him, but very easy to play once you do have that judgment. A little bit quirky, because you can't press the third skill more than once in a fight, but otherwise, very, very cool, and really nice animation. So he definitely earns his place immediately as a true god. Honestly, he goes up there. I would honestly put him above Moonstone. I know that's pretty bold. That basically makes him the best blast character in the game, but essentially he's neck and neck with Moonstone for PvE content, and then he also has the added bonus of being quite good for PvP. Not at the level of Sentry, not quite at the level of maybe Luke Cage and Daredevil yet as a Defender's combo package, but he is very close, I would say. And I think when more people start to adopt Mephisto for PvP, we're going to start seeing him become more of a headache for players to deal with. So yeah, he definitely has earned his spot there in the true gods at the very, very top. Next up, we've got, well, we'll leave Scarlet Witch and Vision for the end because they're the newest characters. So we're going to talk about Professor X briefly here. Professor X didn't get that much of a buff, but the buff that he did get basically just made him better at everything that he does, do more damage, you know, same survivability. Essentially, he's the same that he was before. And so for that, he basically just remains where he was, which is basically at the top of God Light. Not quite good enough to jump into True God's territory. He didn't get a buff that makes him a support character. Didn't really get a buff to his leadership. So none of that really improved for him. Actually, what he is doing is showing me that he was the one character I had left or not the one character, actually. I realize now that Scarlet Witch had that icon. You guys are probably ready to write these comments, but psych, I got you. Oh, there we go. Medusa had it. Dang it. Okay, we missed another one. I have selective blindness. Okay, so yeah, Professor X, really not much to say here. He just got a damage bump, so he's really not going to move around on the tier list very much because of that. But he's good. He's honestly pretty good for dispatch. I wouldn't call him a dispatch god, but he's pretty good. Large AoE, lots of crowd control, lots of damage. Next up, we've got Iron Man. Iron Man actually did gain a lot for himself. A little bit quirky because he needs that 30% to kick in, right? When the boss gets down to 30%, you see some really insane damage. Like, he can really probably compete with some of the highest DPS characters, Mephisto, Moonstone, when you get to that 30%. The problem with Iron Man is just getting to the 30%, right? He's going to be a little bit slower than other characters getting to the 30%, but once that 200% damage kicks in, when the boss has 30% HP or less, then Iron Man starts flying. His new rotation is really tight: 5 cancel, 3 cancel, 4. You get a really nice proc on your energy, and he's very, very flexible to play. So unlike some of these other characters, especially ones that I've covered in this thing, Mephisto and Professor X, that sort of need a judgment or need a rage, Iron Man doesn't, right? His damage may not be as good as theirs, or his utility or his PvP presence might not be as good as these guys, but his damage is definitely up there with the big guns. So you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm actually going to move Jean Grey down to, I'm going to move Magneto. I'm actually going to move, no, I lied. I'm going to move Human Torch above Magneto, under Professor X. Yeah, that's where I think he deserves to be for now. Again, these could be subject to a little bit of a change, but I think he's definitely in God Light. He performs really, really well in all PvE content, besides a couple of game modes where, like ABX, where he can't really take advantage of that uniform passive for the 30%. Up next, we have Human Torch. Okay, it's gonna be tough on Iron Man to see this next one. Human Torch is absolutely insane. So if you guys haven't seen the videos, or if you haven't followed the hype, Human Torch is basically just burning a hole through Marvel Future Fight. He's insane, one-shot god for World Boss Ultimate, DRX. He's really good for ABX. He can hit 7-8 million. He's amazing for World Boss Legend. He's going up to stage 20 plus for me. He's just top to bottom so good. They basically jacked up his attack stat, his buffs to 11, and he hits super hard with his transcended skill. He's basically like a male hero version of Moonstone. That's really a huge praise. That's really huge praise for him. And that's honestly where he gets to go. So yeah, another true god in the Blast class. This update has been really kind to Blast types, adding a ton of really strong Blast types to the game. So yeah, he's right there, and really one of the cheapest characters to build up, because unlike Moonstone, right, the tier list doesn't necessarily address, or it doesn't calculate and factor in the cost of these characters, because that would just make things too complicated and too confusing. But I have to say, on this list of true gods, he is by far the cheapest one. I mean, him and Gambit, but even Gambit is harder to get than Human Torch. So he's by far the cheapest character to build up. And because of that, he may be the best character in the game. If you're considering how expensive the character is, and their cost versus their output, Human Torch may be the #1 character in the game. It's arguable for him, which is a huge compliment, because unlike Beta Ray Bill, who you have to finish the epic quest to get him transcended, unlike Moon Knight, well, I guess Moon Knight would be similar to Human Torch, but Moon Knight, he's there because the combat class is weak. I don't think Moon Knight can really touch Human Torch. The only difference is Moon Knight is flexible for ABX, but that's not really saying much. The combat class has just been weak for a while now, but Human Torch is absolutely insane. Up next, we have Invisible Woman. Didn't get a double buff, so Maker and Thing got a second buff. She didn't get a second round of buffs. She's okay for PvP. I see some people really like using her. She can work on manual with like a CTP of Authority, but her skills have not changed. Like literally none of her animations have really changed. Her skills are basically the same. She still has a heal, she still has charm, she still has a buff with all defense down, she still has the invisibility when you hit her, which can make her pretty good against some characters for PvP. She's still really bad against Sentry, and her support buffs don't really extend beyond the invisibility. And her new buff, which is only for herself, the damage reduction, it's only for 7 seconds. So yeah, she's pretty good, but I don't think she really made enough noise to be comparable, because she can't do nearly enough damage to keep up with Human Torch, and she also doesn't support the rest of the Fantastic Four the way that Thing does. So in my mind, because of that, she can't really compete on the same level, because she's doing neither thing as good as these other characters that are coming out at the same time as her. So I really see her as more of a Storm type character. So I'm actually just going to put her right above Storm. She's good, but I just see her, and in the end, she's going to be a support character for the Fantastic Four. And frankly, her support is more so for PvP than PvE. And it's not even really that helpful for PvP. But she's pretty good. She can do some one-shotting. She can do some PvP action. There's a lot of characters that can do some PvP action, so I don't want to overstate its value. But yeah, she's all right. Maybe I'm a little bit hard on her. But yeah, I don't want to exaggerate her value, you know, especially when you compare her to like her brother, right? Next up, we've got the second to last member of the Fantastic Four, Thing. Now, Thing, unlike Invisible Woman, is an amazing support when he's transcended, right? He gives super armor, all defense. He gives increased damage to bosses now, and he gives 40% all attack. So, and he reduces reflect damage that you take. So Thing is really, really good. The more you want to push with Human Torch, or possibly Maker, Mr. Fantastic in World Boss Legend or in these kind of game modes, the more you might need Thing. And Thing can support Human Torch to one-shot in Danger Room Extreme. Like, he's got a lot of flexible value. As a standalone character, he's not very good, But unlike Invisible Woman, Thing doesn't have to compete with that many combat types, and you got to rank them based on their value, but also within their grouping of typing, right? Because, you know, even though he's not that good, I'm not going to put him down in mid-utility with like Morbius. He's way better than Morbius. He can one-shot, he can support some of the best characters in the game, you know, and he gives the best characters in the game, well, some of the best characters, like Human Torch, he gives him some very valuable buffs, right? The 40% all attack is great, the increased damage to bosses is great, but the super armor is very underrated because it's going to reduce the amount that he gets guard broken by, which is going to, you know, mean fewer interruptions, which is going to make your rotation with him a lot smoother, right? So because of that, I honestly think that he should be in the third spot right with Invisible Woman. Again, not as good as a standalone character. Like, he's not going to solo enemies in PvP the way Invisible Woman does, but on the flip side, he does have value that makes him useful for some very popular, very good characters right now. So I basically see him as a Jessica Jones type character. Jessica Jones probably has a little bit more PvP value, and then Thing has a bit more PvE value. So sort of like 60-40, 40-60 type thing. Last but not least, for the Fantastic Four, we have Maker. Maker would have been a lot lower on this list had I done this tier list just a few days ago before he got patched. So again, that's another reason why I wanted to wait. Maker, pretty good character. Honestly, not too much to say as far as his build goes. His build now, or his rotation now, is a lot easier to do. So I would say if one thing for sure is, if you get the Maker uniform, Mr. Fantastic is easier to play. Easier to play, hits harder, more consistent, and he's got a heal. Not too flashy, but he gets the job done, and he can still work with the CTP of energy, which is helpful. So I will put him at the bottom of True Gods for now. This is maybe overvaluing Maker a little bit. Maybe it overvalues him a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see. The final result will be whether he can compete with Apocalypse. If he can't compete with Apocalypse for ABX, then we might drop him down to God Light. But right now, we put him here. He's also a self-buffing leadership. He also buffs Human Torch's leadership, so that is worth something for different game modes. And he got all defense down now, which makes him better for non-World Boss Legend content. Last but not least here, we've got Vision and Scarlet Witch. Now, this one's going to be kind of interesting. Both of these characters got huge top to bottom reworks. Scarlet Witch accumulation now, much easier tier 3, a little bit wonky with some of her skills with long cooldowns, but overall her damage is a lot higher. But her utility went down a little bit because she lost 3 seconds of mind control. I saw a lot of you guys telling me in the comments that now she has paralysis on her first skill. That's true, but you being able to chain the mind control into the paralysis is going to be very difficult, so I wouldn't really count on that to work. But the real test of Scarlet Witch's value, I mean, she's good against Null and stuff like that, but the real test is going to be whether or not she can replace Captain Marvel. But tentatively, I'm still going to put her at the top of God Light. I think she may have a chance to join True Gods, but right now she's just missing a little something, so we'll have to wait and see how she performs there. And then Vision. Definitely surprised me. I think surprised most players. He is insanely good. I'm seeing screenshots of people with like 2% Pierce beating Null without an obelisk. I beat stage 9 Null with basically no obelisk, with 14% Pierce with Vision. His raw damage is insane. He's got good survivability. He doesn't take much damage anymore. He's a universal now. He's really quite amazing. He's not quite as good as Human Torch is, but he's very, very good. Now, I know I originally said he's proc friendly. I think he's sort of in between proc friendly and proc unfriendly, so that may be kind of unattractive to some players. I find that I'm having more difficulty with him now that he has an energy versus when he had an obelisk. And he's not that much faster for Null, which I know sounds really weird. I might end up giving him a rage, to be honest. That's really the only negative I have to say. That's really the only criticism I have to say of Vision, is that I'm not super happy with his proc rotation and its consistency. He seems a little bit inconsistent for me. You may not find that inconsistency, but I have. Regardless, I do think that he deserves to be above Thor. This is going to sound crazy, in True Gods. Yeah. And he may actually be, you know what? I think he's, oh, and Beta Ray Bill has it too, darn. Okay. I think he's actually, I'm going to say this, I think he's actually better than Beta Ray Bill. Yep. I think he's better than Beta Ray Bill. And you know what I'm going to do? Is Ghost Rider better than Silver Surfer? This is tough. This gets really tough. But I definitely think he deserves to be there at least. He might actually be better than Ghost Rider. I'm going to have to do more testing, but he might be better than Ghost Rider. And I might just be flipping Silver Surfer and Vision's positions on the tier list. which is crazy. But really, Vision is that good, in my opinion, at least for now. I'm going to do more testing, of course, but right now he is absolutely killing it in a major way, and I don't think you'll be disappointed if you invest in him. So, with that being said, this is the new tier list and how it breaks down. Did you see this coming for all these characters? Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what your thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.